host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome, guys, and happy Sunday. And welcome to Sabby's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. I hope your weekend has been going great so far. We'll go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat, and Judge Joe Brown will be here shortly. Shout out to Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says AOC, the only waitress who brings nothing to the table. Yikes. Brutal already. What's going on? FWC says bartender. Shout out to Notori, sends love and laughter. Greetings, Outlaw, says cluster bombs are classified as a war crime because their only purpose is to harm people. Any people, because they can't precisely target. Yep, we'll get into that later on. Shout out to Lord, says Cornel West 2024. Greetings, Smooth, sends a wave. What's going on, Hannah, says Judge Brown. Greetings, Julian, says, damn, AOC has decided to go down with the Titanic. Yes, we'll get into all of that. Greetings, Bad Cookie, says, if you recall, back to one of your call-in episodes, Sabby, I had said that if Dr. West ran in the Green Party, he would be a much bigger threat to the DNC. Looks like I was right on that one. You're right. I do remember that. Shout out to Larez, says, happy Sunday, Sabby and Eric and Sabby fam. What a surprise from Progressive AOC. Smash the like, y'all. That's right, guys. If you have not had a chance to do so, smash that like button. That helps me with the algorithm. Thank you so much. And I lost my place here. Oh, here we go. Shout out to Sebastiano sends volcanoes. Greetings. Oh, I clicked on the wrong way. I don't know what this thing is jumping. Shout out to Sean, says, hey, everybody. Greetings, Sean Miller, says, you're different, Sean. Shout out to Bitter Almond, sends a thumbs up and a rooster, I believe, or a chicken, I think that is. What's going on off the rails? Russiagator says, hey. Shout out to Anthony, sends a smile. Greetings, Raphael says, salute. What's up, Nikki's World says, hello, everyone. Greetings, Net Rondo says, doobie-doobie-doo. Shout out to Miguel, says, peace. Greetings, Skywalk Tree sends a flower. What's going on? Make the best of what's around, says doobie-doobie-doo. Okay, so I take it you are a Dave Matthews fan. I'm thinking the best of what's around. It's a song for Dave Matthews, for those who don't know. Shout out to Rick, says, hey, y'all. What's going on? Whoever says, what's up, Cookies? Nice to see you, my friend. Shout out to Dr. Nick, says, hi, everybody. Greetings. Shandoken says, good day, Sabrina and everyone. Tuning in all the way from Harbor Island in the Bahamas. Oh, wow. Well, have some fun, okay? I heard the Bahamas is really nice. Greetings, Wendy, says, happy Sunday, back at you. What's going on? Who do we have? Kim. I made it just in time. Hi, Sabby. Shout out to Jonathan, says, hey, everyone. Greetings. Mastermind says, hello, fam. Mastermind is also a Sabby member. Shout out to Silver Surfer, says, peace, love. And that's the Star Trek symbol there, Sabby. Shout out to you. Greetings, Pitchforks are coming, who's a Sabby member, says, hi, Sabby and gang. And shout out to Damon, says, positive vibes to all in the chat. Love, so Cal. Greetings, baby, says, hey, Sabby and everyone. And shout out to Red 6, who gives a big wave. Greetings, Corey, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Sunday, Sabby fam. Shout out to Roger, also a Sabby member, says, I thought AOC endorsed Joe months ago. Kinda, but that was before there were other candidates in the race. So just something to keep in mind. That was before Marianne announced that she was running, before RFK, before Dr. West. So yeah, just something to think about there. Shout out to Marco, says they love wars, but don't fight in any of them. SMH. That is a good point. Very good point there. And shout out to whoever says smart guy cookies told you you were smart. Yes, bad cookies is very smart, very much. Greetings, Frank says, hi, Sabby from Corpus Christi, Texas. Listen all the time. My favorite show while dashing all morning. Interesting. I've never been to Texas, believe it or not, but I have known people who were stationed in Corpus Christi. So it's really interesting. Sound Yata. Hello, do you have a channel for your subscribers to organize and chat? Yes, I have a Discord. So if you look at the description for all of my videos, there's a bunch of links there for other platforms that I'm on, and Discord is also a link there as well. I forget to mention it sometimes because I'm actually not on Discord that much. Sorry. It's another platform for me. And I'm just like, there's too many platforms to be everywhere all the time. But yeah, I do have a Discord, and that's where you guys can chat with each other. And if I remember correctly, and Eric, you can let me know, there's even a little folder. If I remember, there's a folder that says organizing or something like that. Might have been the ballot initiatives organizing. But yes, that's the best way to be able to chat with people who, I guess to chat with people who watch this show without having to be in the live chat. Shout out to the real Dana, says happy Sunday. Judge is logging on. Wi-Fi in Memphis is a little slow at times. Thank you so much, Dana. Shout out to Deneen, says Sabby Sunday. Yes, yes, yes. All right. So while we wait for Judge Brown, I do want to go ahead and share the thumbnail to show you what we are going to discuss today. Should be a pretty interesting show. A lot of things happened over the weekend so far. Okay, tonight we are discussing AOC endorses Joe Biden. Yes, it has happened, even though there are other candidates in the race that are actually running on progressive issues that she agreed with. So we're going to get into that discussion. We're also going to discuss Dr. Cornel West scares Democrats. So that's a big story. They're already smearing Dr. West. And if you have not heard this one is probably the most concerning of all. Joe Biden cluster choice. That's about those cluster bombs that he has announced that he's going to try to send over to Ukraine. We're going to get into that. And of course, Judge Joe Brown joins, and I believe he is here now. Judge Brown, whenever you're ready, if you just give me a thumbs up, I'll go ahead and bring you on. I think he's figuring out there. Yeah, you ready? If you just give me a thumbs, that'll let me know if I can. Okay, he said 1 minute. Okay, he's ready now.
Yeah, all right.
Hello.
Hi there. How are you, my dear? All right. Now, showtime.
Welcome.
Judges in the house.
Welcome. All right, guys, my guest tonight is Judge Joe Brown. He is a former lawyer and television personality, and he is now a candidate for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you so much for coming on, Judge Brown.
Practicing lawyer once a lawyer, always a lawyer. You know, you're retired, doesn't stop you from having what it is up here, but you know, I don't practice. But yeah, anyway, real live deal, real thing, UCLA way back when. All right, so you got me. What are we going to do? Where are we going?
First, I want to start off a little bit talking about your background, and then we'll get into your mayor race, and I have a couple questions. Yeah, we'll start off with your background because I'm curious about something. I noticed that you and Judge Mathis have something in common other than being judges.
No, we don't.
No, but let me. I knew you were going to say that. No, I was going to say.
A gang member. I never was. I had to be around. He didn't.
But both of you grew up in tough neighborhoods, right? So
that may be true, but it was a different thing. See, tough is like, what do you call it tough? 1,000 years ago when there were lions out there getting ready to have you for breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Or are you just talking about some local homies down in the hood that didn't have daddies around? See, my situation, just about everybody knew who Pops was back when. He was either there with you. Very, very few had been divorced from moms. Some died in Korea, some died in World War II. But, you had idea. We didn't have that kind of thing that they had so recently now where nobody was there to teach you.
Mm.
There's a
Well,
big difference. And we didn't join gangs. It was always little crybabies that joined the gangs. They were crying about mom and snot running all out their nose in the 5th grade. Then when they got in the 7th grade and they passed it up, they were all this and that, which they really weren't still. So anyway, it is what it is.
but how
No,
would you say, how did you grew up in Crenshaw, and I think a lot of
no,
us.
Crenshaw was nice. I grew up for the longest time. I was on 58th Place in Normandy, which is right down where things are. That wasn't even South Central then because they didn't come up with that name until it was years later. Now the city council said it is so possessed of an onus that we can't use South Central anymore. But anyway, it is what it was. So Crenshaw was much later.
Mm. Do you feel that the movie Boys in the Hood depicts it accurately?
Oh yeah, but what's in Boys in the Hood in the Crenshaw area over by the railroad tracks and around and about there, that was over where I was. You know, everybody had to accommodate the fools in the gang, but in the gangs, but only the ones that didn't have daddy, nobody else joined, so we had to deal with them. They bunch of little mama's boys who didn't know what it was to be a man, didn't understand unity and duty, honor, obligation, and all that other kind of stuff, working hard and taking care of those who depended on you. They didn't understand that. So, yeah, there was that. But it was what it was. And the Boys in the Hood was a lot like what I experienced when I was growing up. Quite similar. And some of us had fathers. I guess Lawrence Fishburne's character was a stand in for that. And some of us, very few of us, had situations like that crazy mama where, let's see, one of her sons was Ice Cube, who was the good one. She didn't like his daddy. So she mistreated him, the little crazy one who was an athlete. She loved his daddy's dirty draws, and she wasted the time on the loser. So it's all about that. It's all about that.
Well, why did you decide to become a judge?
I didn't decide to become a judge. It's what happened. You can't decide early in life you're going to be a judge. If you do that, you're not worthy of being one because you don't become learned and experienced in the law and the wise in the ways of the world. You have to be called to be a judge. Your life has to have fallen in place so you have the opportunity to get experience where if you're going to be a good judge, you aren't really a judge. What you are is a village chieftain, and a village chieftain also has to be a judge because it's about your business to make sure that where you live is an orderly place, because without that, everything goes to hell. I don't know where these folk get the idea now that somehow or another law and order is anti-black, because everywhere on the whole planet, you get humans, first thing they do is set up some kind of code. You have standards, like in the John Wick franchise. What separates humans from animals? The rules. And if you have no rules, you're animals, and there are consequences, and everybody's about that. So we need to remember that again.
I don't think people are against having rules per se. I think a lot of people are just against people abusing power.
Well, then, goddamn it, get your own power. You want power? Sit your ass down at the kitchen table and do your homework, K through 12. Or if you got a son or a daughter, sit down and then do it with them. And don't just favor the girls, because girls don't do drive-bys. You neglect your boys, and don't know what the Spartan mothers used to tell their son, come back with your shield on and do or die. You don't put the word in your son's head, then you got a drive-by situation 16 years later.
Mm.
So we can do what we need to do, and there's no white supremacist sitting on the other side of the kitchen table keeping anybody from doing homework.
So why did you decide to run for mayor of Memphis?
An old friend of mine of 50 years talked me into it, the late Mrs. or Dr. Barbara Cooper from Memphis, Tennessee. She slipped and fell when she was 94 years old, got a blood clot, had a coma that resulted from it. She revived, but she didn't recover really. She was the oldest elected person actively serving in the state legislature here in Tennessee. Been a good woman, and I'd been doing a lot of things, and in my life I kind of got called to what I did. I didn't particularly want to be a judge. I definitely didn't want to be a lawyer. It just kind of sort of happened, and that's the way of it. It's like, what are you about and what are your objectives in life? What are my objectives? My thing is to be a man. And I'm wearing this from a friend. He does this masculinity clothing thing, which is what this says. So if you're going to be a man, you're about duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. You're a man of peace who can be brave and courageous when necessary. And you are about my personal motto, which is protecting womanhood and childhood and promoting manhood. That's how humanity works. And if you're not about that, you're not worth any damn thing as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, there.
Oh, Judge Brown, I want to show everyone your website here for mayor. So it says send Brown downtown, Memphis Mayor 2023. And one of the things I noticed about your campaign, it says people bought, people owned. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I believe you're running a grassroots campaign.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. If you want to find out what who owns your local officials, if anybody, there's a website. It's known as followthemoney.org. Don't Google it. You'll go nowhere. Just enter it directly into your browser. Followthemoney.org. It's complicated, but you can enter the name of the individual you're concerned with, what they are about, where they're from, and it'll tell you who's contributed to them and how much. So you can see whether you have a real live representative or you're being gamed because you got a stooge that is owned by somebody else. And when you find out they are, then you know what time it is. That's why we don't have much going on right now, because institutions like Black Caucus are just essentially worthless. They haven't done anything for black folk more than the last 30 years, and we have enough of them to be quite effective were they to decide to do that, rather than using our votes to be put in place to be surrogates for something else. What do I mean by that? Well, it's hard being black in America, you know. And a lot of folks go, oh, I don't want to be a Negro anymore. I want to quit it. I want to be something else. So what am I going to be? Oh, I can be one of these guys over here. Oh, yeah. And they'll take care of me. I might be just a pet or a lapdog, but they'll take good care of me, and I can wag my tail and let my tongue hang out, sit on my ass and roll over and get my tummy scratched. And I can do what I want to do, or else the new thing is we've got all these opportunities in cities like Memphis, and we've got too many of the people are just plain crooks. They steal from the people and their ideas. It's our term to get the gravy. No, it's your term to deliver justice, equity, and fair government. So right now, Memphis, let's take this. Memphis just happens to be the largest predominantly black city in America. We had a recent thing where a young man named Tyree Nichols, who got put up for adoption by the family that was crying all over him during all of the send away ceremonies. He was adopted by a white couple in California and raised. They sent him back to Tennessee to meet up with his birth family. Well, they didn't have much to do with him. He wound up getting targeted by some police who didn't do it because they were police. They had to deal. They did it because, classic thing. Three ways going on. Love affairs went wrong. Had nothing to do with the police, but everybody was talking about white supremacy. They brought in grinning hyena, Camilla Harris, Imhoff, Clown Sharpton, and whatever, and they got to talking about white supremacy. Well, guess what? 65% of the police department's black. The chief of police is a black female. The sheriff is a black male. 80% of the command hierarchy in the police and the sheriff's department's black. 65% of the jury pool is black. 60% of the criminal court judges are black and female. So where the hell is the racism that's supposed to be the white supremacy? See, it's just you got to do what you got to do, and nobody owes you a damn thing. And if you don't understand that, go out there and deal with get hit by a bolt of lightning, done in by an earthquake, volcano, meteorite hitting you because you had to be in the wrong place, wrong time, plane crash, tsunami, flood, typhoon, hurricane, you name it. All kinds of stuff will kill you. So nothing owes you anything unless you're a vegetarian. Last time you ate something, did you ask the poor animal if it wanted to be on your plate? No, it ain't fair. If you're a cow or you're a chicken, hell, I'd sure as hell hate to be a damn chicken. Look at Popeyes and all the chickens they killed off while stupid Negroes were waiting in line in 100-degree heat for 2 hours to get a cheap piece of fast food. So, I mean, think about it. And then why are we sitting there? I went out the other night. I got hungry late at night.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Judge Brown, we lost you. Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, no, we lost you again. Oh, no. I think it's we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Somebody tried to call out his help. Didn't do not disturb, so maybe that won't interfere. I went out late, wanted a snack. So I go up and I find the hamburger place is open. There are 27 cars in line. And I said, damn, if I'm going to be big enough fool to go wait that long to get something that's going to kill me off. No, I have more concern for self. I won't even wait that damn long to get served in a 5-star restaurant. Here you are with junk food. You're in line, 27 cars, and the folk waiting on you can't count anyway, especially if the cash register with the pictures goes down to do it for them. No way. See, so what do we do to be stuck on stupid? You got to start thinking. If you want something, you got to work at it. Nothing comes free. Yo, man, it's like it's white supremacy keep me down. Oh, it does? Really? Oh, yeah, man. See, my lady, man, we try. Well, what are you bringing to the mix, man? Well, yeah, man, she got a good job. Well, what do you do? What you mean what I do? I smooth her? No, what do you do? Well, man, I'll make sure she, it worked well for. No, that ain't what a man does. Don't you retire, dear man. Titanic sinks, you supposed to sink with the ship, say the women and children lifeboat first type stuff. Takes a lot of conditioning, and you letting your lady take care of you. You ain't shit, man. You just simping.
Well, I like the fact that you're running for local office because I feel like a lot of people that end up running, they want to run for like a congressional seat or like something like that. And I always tell people that local politics is very important. And I feel like there's a lot of things happening on the local level that people just aren't paying attention to. There's a lot of laws and things that are being passed. And I think you can have a lot of impact on the local level, more so on the national level. And you brought up the issue with the money. And this is something that we talk about a lot on the show. A lot of our politicians are bought and paid for. And then people get really angry because I saw a lot of people show up to support Joe Biden in 2020, standing in line for 10, 14 hours. Some
He's a
people.
racist, low-down dog, a piece of urban trailer park trash. Excuse me. And I hate to insult folk. I heard that racist dog give one of the worst, most racist speeches I've ever heard in my life. It was 1972. It was outside the Capitol building in Dover, Delaware, where I was doing research for a DC think tank as an intern. All right. And George Wallace was there. I think he may have still been, well, he was in a wheelchair. There was Byrd, and there was Stedis, and there was, let's see, Forbes, who said there'll be no Negroes coming to the Little Rock High School as long as I'm governor, back when in the 50s. And let's see, there was James O. Eastland from Mississippi, and they had this ducktail wearing clown of hairstyle that they hadn't worn since the late 50s. And this is 1972, and this idiot gets up there and talks about how proud he is to have been adopted by Delaware, a state that knew the Negro, and we hadn't called ourselves that in a long time. It was Black or Afro-American. And he was talking about there were Negro children who turned schools into zoos. Yeah. And then there were Negroes out in the streets who turned the streets into jungles. And he and Eastland were going to make sure that these Negroes got put in zoos. And he was upset with Delaware for not seceding from the Union and joining the glorious South. And they were bragging about that new wimpy womp chump who was going to be the newest Dixiecrat. And a racist dog has done a whole lot to screw us around. Had the nerve to say, you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Well, I'm black, you goddamn bastard. So to hell with you. And you're a damn crook and you need to be in jail. And by the way, I was the one that was doing that judge on the moot court thing where we looked at the 3 laptops that crackhead left with the repairman. It wasn't 1, it was 3. And we looked at the downloads, and there's some stuff in there that people need to be in jail for. And law and order, lying hypocrites sitting up in there, and now turned the White House into the crack house, I guess. Latest little scam. And now they're trying to spin that. Did it be found in the foyer where somebody left a bag, you know? And who found it, by the way? Was it the Secret Service or was it one of the black clerical or janitorial staff who said, I don't like this fool. The more I see him, hell, look what we found. But then it was in the library, which is very, very restricted. And then in the executive office section, which you got to get a secret clearance to get up in there. You know, or was it what they had on Twitter, that little fast vignette of Hunter, as he was stalking off behind somebody, taking a one-shot hit. Yeah, okay, fine.
We tried to warn people about Joe Biden. Why do you think people still, particularly black people, why do you think black people still showed up to vote for Joe Biden?
We love the Samantha. Oh, we so do. He been so good. He give us an extra ration to comb home when we be doing some work. You know, we don't work too hard, but we sure love Massa. He ain't locked the gates on the plantation. We walk off whenever we want, but we sure love staying. And Lord, he give us some nice treats and make him feel good. He scratches right behind the ears, he do. Sure. Sorry, specimen. Every other ethnic group in the United States of America periodically tells the party they've been supporting, go to hell. You're not doing enough. We'll go the other way. oh, we have to vote for the lesser of two evils and these horrible Republicans and all these other folks. Yeah, well, what's this bunch of jerks done here except sold you out for that Skittle stuff, with all the colors in it? Went after it rains in the sky. And, that's your business. Get your freak on in your bedroom, do your thing. But what they're trying to do is get in touch with your kids so they can, oh my, look at that nice tender one over there. Oh, doesn't he look sweet? He's 9. He's so unspoiled. Yeah. Get your filthy grubbies off of the children. And it's a cult, and they're trying to make it the official religion of the United States. And if you don't get it, we've got Judaism, we've got Christianity, we've got Islam, we've got Hinduism, and we've got Buddhism. But guess what? There's no God for Buddhism. It's a system of philosophy. Buddha was a prince who renounced his royalty to do good works. They have no God. That in the sky after rain bunch, it doesn't have a God either, but it's a system of philosophy. And not just they get their freak on in a certain kind of way in a bedroom, it's a lifestyle. And by the way, a lot of people who do that kind of thing to get their freak on, they think the damn thing is a cult. And it is. It's like, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you like Reverend Jim Jones and drinking Kool-Aid at large church picnics in Guyana. Or if you're Islamic, it doesn't mean you support ISIS or Al Qaeda either. So you can't put a cross, crescent, 6-pointed Jewish star. You can't put a Hindu symbol or Buddha under the American flag, but you can put all those colors under there. And you can't put a nativity scene out in City Hall or anywhere that the city, state, county, feds pay for, but you go places and they got that after the rain color scheme that city employees painted the sidewalks with and the crosswalks with, and big 11-floor banners hanging from a federal building. And at the embassy or the consulate, you see that flag under the American flag, which, by the way, is against the law, but it doesn't make any difference. And oh, they want to corrupt your children. And then the Michigan state legislative chamber, their house, passed something that fortunately hasn't gone to their Senate nor gotten through the governor, that would make it a felony if you call somebody outside of their pronoun. And then that's the most ridiculous damn thing in the world. First Amendment says you got freedom of speech, but it's a felony if you don't know this idiot's particular special pronoun. And, how the hell are you supposed to know? You don't even know what his name is. What you supposed to do? Write the goddamn thing on his forehead? And if he's that big a fool, you call it a it. He, she, it. He, she, it is here now. What are you supposed to say? They is here now? That's bad English. So you want to corrupt the English language and screw up communications because some little selfish wimp hates what they are, and you want to turn all your stuff into being guided by some fool that needs a little mental health because they hate themselves so much they want to cut their balls and swing her off, or they want to show up what they got.
I think if someone asks you to call them, like for me, if someone asked me to call them, a certain pronoun, I respect, that person's wishes.
I'm saying the hell with you.
Why?
No, because I'm not corrupting the English language for you. I'm sorry if you hate yourself, but, I grew up in an era where in elementary, junior high, and high school, we used to run the dozens for recreation. Hey, man, I won't say nothing about your mama, man, but last night when I was by there, man, hey, man, I won't say nothing about your mama, man. She's so big, man, she can't fit in the bathtub, but with 2 drops of water. That's why she can't never get clean. She stinks so much, man. That's why we used to do run recreation. If I say you stupid enough to want to put that on your forehead, I'm talking about you. What's wrong with you, man? You hate yourself? What, man? Wait a minute.
But
You gonna cut your shit off, man? What's the matter with you?
but I will say that the language, the English language has evolved though over the years,
Yeah,
you know.
well, I'm not gonna help it devolve. You know, it's hard enough for people to learn how to speak it. So you don't really learn the facility in the English language. Nobody does until you get about 60 years old. That's when your vocabulary picks up to its max and you get how to use it. That hard, and I listen to people can't even speak English. They have no idea syntax, object, predicate, verbs, adjectives, what the devil to do, how to deal with putting a sentence together, a paragraph, or getting a coherent thought down in writing. They can't write longhand anymore, and I'm not going to help that out. No, you can tough it up and you can do what human beings have done since day one, which is you have a duty, honor, and obligation to make where you are a better damn place and do what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be brave and courageous because there's a lion out there, Simba, aka adversity, that's looking at you like, oh, that looks pretty good. I bet that one would be nice and tender with a little sauce here and maybe leave it out for a few days to ripen up, you know, so it gets an aroma and bouquet, you know, be nice and tender. Put it up in the tree for a little bit so the hyenas don't get that. Oh, wow, quite tasty. See, we have things that we have to deal with. So I'm not going to corrupt the English language. Hell with you. I have my First Amendment rights, and the First Amendment does not embrace me not hurting your feelings. As long as I'm doing what I'm entitled to do, to hell with your damn feelings. Man the hell up, woman up, and do what you're supposed to do, because everybody depends on everybody else. And the more folk do their duty, the better it is.
Well, I choose, like me personally, I choose to respect people's, like, you know, what they want to be called. But I do want to get to this point here about Biden and Trump, because I know
Well,
that
I'm not. You either he, she, or it. Now,
I
and if you are singular, you get the singular pronoun, adjective, and verb, and the context is singular. You can be she, he, or it. I'm not going to make you a plural, and you're nowhere near royalty in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, forbids ennoblement. So you cannot sit there and say, oh, we have an audience. No, you're not royalty. There's enough clowning that the British royals do any damn way. Leave it over there.
well, I think one of the things that bothers me, and a lot of the people in this audience, we've talked about this a lot, is that people are not focusing on the big issues right now. Like, a lot of people are really angry about the economy. They're mad about inflation. They're mad about, like, the economic issues. And I feel like this is where someone like Ron DeSantis gets this totally wrong. That's why he's not doing well in the polls. He's not focusing on the most pressing needs for working class people in this country right now. And also, neither is Joe Biden. And that's why he's not polling well. And Donald Trump is ahead of Joe Biden in the polls, even though Donald Trump has an indictment against him, which I think is actually helping him.
Is ridiculous. It's contrary to American law. And if you think about it, it's a damn fool move. Let's talk about that when you get through making your point.
Yeah. So what I was going to mention is that I know that some people gave you criticism because you supported Donald Trump. And so
I didn't
want you to
support
explain.
him. It's the law. For example, everybody knows Miranda rights. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence against you, aside from the huge panoply of rights that are set forth in the Fifth Amendment. Well, Miranda was not a nice person. Back in the 60s, when the U.S. Supreme Court identified your rights under the general category using his name, he was a real live jerk. They let him out. He got put back in jail for another felony. And when he got out, he died violently because somebody killed him. So anyway, Miranda was not a nice person. Most of the rights that we have that everybody takes for granted are articulated in the name of somebody that's not nice. For 50 years, I've been dealing with criminal justice, and most of the people that I dealt with were not nice people. But those rights are not for just criminals. Those rights are to protect Americans from political oppression through the use of untrammeled government authority and power. Now, that being the case, forget Donald Trump. Let's just talk about it. Let's go to this jackass in New York that got him indicted for what? Bribing Stormy Daniels not to embarrass him. Well, if you pay somebody not to embarrass you, what happened to you? You got blackmailed. So this stupid idiot that should have flunked criminal law and con law in law school in his first year, he's the DA, and he's stupid enough to indict somebody for being the victim of a felony blackmail attempt. Okay, we indict the corporation because they didn't make a full disclosure on the corporate forms, where the corporate forms are public record. American law, civil law, whatever the merits of the case, encourage settlement. When you have settlement, you have a gag provision. So you're supposed to keep secret what the conditions are. So if in this public record, the corporate entity had specifically said what they were doing, they would have violated the gag provision. So you indict an entity for following the law, etc. The whole damn thing is bogus. You go to this mess down there that they did in Florida for what, secrets? Well, there is a case known as United States Department of the Navy versus Egan, EGAN, 1988, U.S. Supreme Court. There are various and sundry concurring opinions. What they say is the President of the United States, who constitutionally is commander-in-chief and also chief diplomat, has absolute, unquestioned authority to classify anything he chooses to classify or declassify anything he chooses to declassify in any form, shape, or fashion he chooses, partially or completely. Since he's commander-in-chief, he can override the whole damn military. Since he's chief diplomat, he's the one that makes the final decisions. Hey, Mr. Ambassador from France or Mr. Premier, you need to know this. The CIA came up with this. And guess what? The People's Republic is trying to run game on you. You need to be aware of it. Let me show you what we have. Now, he also, since he took the oath of office, that doesn't stop. It's continuous because you swore that you would uphold the law and your duty. When you leave the office, you still have a fiduciary responsibility to the public to uphold it. He didn't give it to the archivist. Well, who the hell knows what kind of security clearance the archivists have and whether there's some dip in there that wants to reveal something that shouldn't get out and he might sell it. Oh, what about wiki stuff? You know,
why aren't more people? Why are more people saying this? What you just said.
Because they're ignorant. They don't have a clue. Let me give you another one. How much have you heard the woke crowd talk about the Constitution's wrong? It calls black folk 3/5 of a person. I defy these ignoramuses to look at the Constitution and find me one damn thing in it that actually mentions race, and it certainly doesn't declare anybody 3/5 of a person. It merely says for purposes of apportioning representation in the House of Representatives, which shall otherwise be based on a census to be conducted every 10 years, 3/5 of all people, all persons, 3/5 of all persons held in the condition of slavery shall be counted toward that number. It doesn't say that 3/5 of a person. It also says, by the way, at the time, women couldn't vote. Most white men couldn't vote. But 3/5 of the people that are held in slavery shall be counted toward that number. And it says specifically, Indians who do not pay taxes are excluded from that number. It says you have to be a resident in the state or be excluded. Now idiots are going around with the first sentence ever given in a census ever conducted in this country in the last 180 years, where it didn't ask you whether you were a citizen. They want to know who's in the state, not whether or not you're a citizen who can vote, but just so you can be counted. Had they not done that in the 2020 census, California would have lost 2 representatives in the House. Illinois would have probably lost 1, and so would New York. But Trump, again, was right on that when he said you need to ask them, are they citizens? Now, I've participated in 5 census takings as an adult. And this is the first and only one where I was not asked whether I was a citizen, and further was not asked what kind of status my parents had and how they got it. Why? So they can keep the number of representatives they have in these states that would lose them. But interestingly enough, these people can't vote. So the people that were there would be able to get extra representation. But the people that were being represented couldn't vote, just like when the Constitution was written. Slaves certainly couldn't. People who had committed to involuntary servitude, indentured servants, women could not vote, and most white men could not vote. So, I mean, what else is new? That's that whole thing about let's give people that live in D.C., they need to have votes. They need to be able to vote for someone that can cast a vote in the House and in the Senate. Yeah, if you want to do that, devolve the District of Columbia, send it back to Maryland so they become part of Maryland, keep the downtown government mall, the district, make it the city of Washington, not the district, and then keep the mall, Capitol Mall is the district, and everybody else can vote for somebody that can cast a vote on the House floor or the Senate floor. That take care of it. You got a small city, well, a large small city, 300 some thousand folk essentially, and you're supposed to give them 2 U.S. senators and 2 congressmen so they can sit there and get the same impact as a whole state? Hell no. That's just another way for a political perspective to wind up getting extra clout. That's not wrong. That's not right. That's wrong. But we don't think about it.
So you agree with DC statehood?
Hell no.
Why
Keep it
not?
exactly like it is, because the idea is DC is supposed to be transitory. You come through there and you work for a short while with the DC government, then you go back to your state. But if you want to sit there and say, DC is my permanent residence, then all you got to do is give it back to Maryland. And then they can vote for Congress and Senate in Maryland, and they can get representation that way. Otherwise, it's just the capital of the nation, so you have the district. But you can keep the downtown government mall as the very limited district. And nobody lives down there. You have Smithsonian Institution, you got a White House, you have the observatory, Naval Observatory, where the vice president lives. Everybody else is transitory. So just keep that as the district and give Maryland back the territory that is now the District of Columbia, and they can vote. You solve the problem, but you don't give 350,000 folk 2 senators that can vote and 2 congressmen that can vote like they are a whole state. And then, see, it's wrong.
How do you feel about, I mean, because we've had a lot of discussion about with people on the street talking about the whole DC issue. How do you feel about going into the 2024 election? Give me your honest opinion about RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, primary challenging Joe Biden. I know it's not going to be fair. I already know the DNC's corporation. They've already rigged this for Joe Biden. And then
I know they have to. They got a senile, clumsy fool who wasn't all that bright to begin with, a long-term liar. He lied about his educational status and standing. He sat there. He's a damn hypocrite. He screwed up American criminal law on the federal level. He and Eastland over the years, along with Byrd. A lot of what we have wrong right now with the criminal justice system is because that SOB put in place some rules that allow a federal prosecutor to deliberately and intentionally engage in a process of bankrupting or financially disabling somebody that he or she targets with no chance of getting a criminal conviction. It is a process where the feds can try you on ambush. It is a process where you have this travesty, and I dealt with this when I practiced criminal law. Somebody gets asked, Well, tell me about this. I don't know anything about it. And then they get indicted on multiple counts, which you get an acquittal on, and get convicted on the one count that says they lied when they say they didn't know anything about it. Why? Because they said you're in here for investigation for tax fraud. Okay. Well, I don't know anything about that. Well, we just told you. So now we got one count where we can convict you, and we snatched all of the discretion from the judge in sentencing. See, so yeah, okay. See, that's what we have. And it wasn't just the 94 Act this bastard was responsible for. It was the 79 one, the 81, the 87, the 88, the 91, and the 94.
I told you guys it was multiple. There were multiple ones under Joe Biden. Do you think that? How do you
He's
feel
the
about?
he's the one that, along with Isla Stennis, got into abolishing federal parole and federal probation, except for certain very minor misdemeanor offenses, unless you're somebody like Geithner, Obama's Treasury Secretary, who got indicted for tax fraud in the amount of $28 million. And what he wound up doing was he paid a $42,000 fine, got 6 months suspended and put on probation. And then he became Treasury Secretary less than 2 years later and over IRS. Poor Wesley Snipes overpaid his taxes by $250,000. I was there present for his sentencing when I testified as a witness for him. I was the first one the judge called because his lawyer didn't know what he was doing and didn't call anybody. But in any event, IRS had a refund check for $250,000. They found him guilty of 3 counts of failure to file a complete set of returns, and he didn't even do it. There was another company that got indicted for falsifying their status in terms of the regulations, and they told him they were going to do it. He was out of the country for 3 years doing movies where he was helping the country out. See, Wesley Snipes is a real live badass, and my late brother was training him. So it's interesting. He got 3 damn years in a federal facility for overpaying his taxes by $250,000, and Geithner got a suspended sentence and $42,000 in fines for stealing $28 million from the taxpayers. See, I mean, what time is it? See, that's what Biden set up. And by the way, what's on those tapes is criminal. There is no question about it. We had a mock proceeding on whether or not he was guilty or not guilty, but whether there is probable cause to believe that there should be further investigating for what they call FARA violations, FARA, Foreign Agents Registration Act stuff. And there is clear and convincing evidence that he should have been prosecuted and indicted for that. And also other stuff in there too. He's setting up a meeting with his dad and a certain named individual through the emails that are on that laptop that the repairman downloaded all of them, kept the record of them. And guess what? The question is, did he in fact go by the Biden residence as directed, where there were classified documents that he was supposed to take a look at? And the person in question got indicted, worked out an agreement for espionage against the United States. And by the way, that stuff that they're getting him on in Florida and Mar-a-Lago, well, the Secret Service guarded Mar-a-Lago just like they did the White House. The documents by law were prepared for guess whose benefit? CIA and NSA. Their charter is to prepare intelligence briefings for the president of the United States. So he was the president, and if he's like me or somebody like Bill Clinton, you read it, it's in your mind. Can't anybody take it? So, I mean, unless you're going to accuse him of spilling the beans to the Russians, well, what about all the rest of them? You can't take it away. So if he chooses to keep it where he is because there is a high probability that there's some incriminating evidence in there that might implicate Clumsy Boy who can't walk upstairs without falling down the damn things.
Who's protecting Hunter Biden, Judge Brown? Who do you feel is protecting Hunter Biden?
His daddy and some other people. Obama wants it too. There's some nasty stuff on there. We won't even get to what's revealed because Hunter Biden thought he was a porn star and was trying to make porn on the same laptops. Some of it's quite interesting, and who he was having sex with on there is interesting too, but I'm not getting into that salacious tabloid nonsense. So some people might have interest to protect. Also, there are some White House tapes in there that need to be kept quiet until the grand jury looks at them, because unlike the Nixon tapes where all you got was audio, in this case you got visual and you can see who's saying what and who's there. And quite frankly, it starts bordering on treason in terms of as it's defined in the Constitution. So yeah, there's some people that really don't want that stuff out. And we still have to deal with who went by there to go take a look at the classified documents that the vice president had no authority to declassify. And oh, by the way, Department of the Navy versus Egan, at least one of those concurrent opinions says that the president has the same kind of authority to declassify that he has to pardon. In other words, the presidential pardon power is unquestioned. It does not have to be justified, rationalized, and can't do anything about it. So,
well, Judge Brown, I have one more question for you that I think a lot of people sent this one in, and it's about MLK Jr. James Earl Ray continued to say that he was innocent.
He didn't kill him, I can tell you that. The Memphis Police Department, their homicide bureau, always said, why are you charging James Earl Ray? He wasn't even in Memphis on the day in question. Who shot him? The FBI went over a few hundred yards from their training academy and recruited 2 men from the Marine Sniper School that was operating at Quantico at the time. They'd just gotten back from the NAM. The FBI, late December 1967, on invoice, got 5 XM21 sniper weapons, which had a peculiar rate of rifling twist because they had special barrels. The rifling twist in those rifles exactly matches the ballistics reflected on the bullet they pulled out of King's body. So 5 of those weapons were delivered to the FBI late December 1967. The same month King got assassinated, April 1968, the Justice Department ordered the FBI to return all 5 to the Defense Department because they were experimental and they needed them in the NAM. The FBI on inventory claimed they lost one. We have the serial number that reflects the lost one. That's the murder weapon. Now, how does the FBI lose an experimental sniper rifle when they don't even have a hostage rescue team? The shot did not come from the flop house nor the bushes, which are right above each other in line with the Lorraine Motel. They came from the fire station. There was a 2-man hit team, a sniper team. The inside man that informed them on when King was coming out and arranged for when King was coming out was not Jesse Jackson. So we know who it was, and there's a lot to it. Second thing is talking to the captain of homicide, who retired as head of homicide. He's the late Captain Tommy Smith. He's dead now, but we got a deposition from him. He says when he got there as the first detective, you couldn't have taken a shot because there's a tree blocking both the bushes and the flop house bathroom window from a view of the Lorraine Motel. Hour later, while they were there, somebody cut the tree down. They found there was an order to cut it down, delivered to the sanitation department to be cut down at 9 a.m. But sanitation workers were on strike. Next thing, it was a peculiar aspect of the rifle and ammunition in question. Amongst other things, there was supposed to be this confusion of sound. So when you're in the jungle, instead of being able to hear the crack of a sonic rifle bullet going past a tree, crack, 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 oh, it came from right over there, guys. Let's go get that sniper. It's not going to leave that crack. And instead of the bullet getting there before the sound gets there before the bullet. And everybody on that balcony says they heard the shot first, and then they heard the bullet hitting King. As to a story, by the way, out there that says he got smothered later on in the hospital, well, that's not true. He got shot right below the right cheek, went in, jacked up his molars, upper jaw was badly damaged, wrecked his tongue, took out more molars on his lower jaw, exited the body between the lower jaws. He probably would have lived, but he would have been able to talk. It hit right there on the clavicle, deflected around under the tough neck skin, destroyed part of the carotid artery complex. He did not have the skin wrecked right there. Flap got yanked, ripped down, but the blood went inside the thorax. Bullet traveled across the back, and he bled out within a few seconds. He probably had maybe 10, 15 seconds to live. He didn't make it to a hospital with the injuries he received, but a lot of folks said somebody smothered him. No, that's not what happened. I know Dr. Claude Pepper wrote this thing where he's talking about this phantasmal Raoul, but with all due respect, I know more about it than he does. It wasn't any Raoul. That's a dead end. There were at least four alternative scapegoats, and Ray was the most interesting one because he wasn't even in town. Now, that rifle was not sighted in. He had a 30-06 Remington Game Master, not a bolt action precision rifle, but a pump action rifle. He had never been sighted in. Somebody test fired it the day after. It hit 6 feet to the right and 4 feet low at 100 yards. Somebody attempted a headshot, which with a 30 caliber rifle firing ordinary soft point ammo, if you hit torso shot and the person standing next to an emergency room, that's non-survivable. They're dead. But they took a headshot, almost missed it. So, I mean, Ray had absolutely nothing to do with it. And to put icing on the cake, some years ago, I got approached with a woman who did this special algorithm for a device that the Defense Department and the State Department use. And what it does is it analyzes tone of voice and body language. You need a clear video recording of someone. It's not a polygraph test. And since when people talk like I am to you, only 15% of what I'm saying to you consists of the words, 35% comes from the tone, and 50% comes from body language. So 85% of what I'm saying comes from something other than the words used. So on this analysis with this device, what happened was this. Some people in the Defense Department that were concerned with what happens in Guantanamo in terms of what they were doing to prisoners became concerned about following their oath as citizen officers in the military, and they wanted to assess what was going on, so they rented 6.5 hours of video on an interview done in Nashville of James Earl Ray. Well, they thought they were going to get the bottom line profile on a liar. they were astonished when for 6 hours they discovered that on their device, this man was telling the absolute truth with the exception of two questions. And essentially the two questions were, is if you didn't do it, do you know who did it? And then Ray says, I don't know, or I'm not sure. So it shows he's equivocating. But other than that, when he denies, he's showing way off the graph being truthful. And they used this stuff to determine what bin Laden and Putin back then were saying for real through the State Department and the Department of Defense. So they relied upon it and they were astonished by the results. So they wanted to contact me and find out what was going on. And there's another thing too. Back when we got approached by the Vatican, the Pope at the time was trying to figure out a way to posthumously make King a Catholic so he could be sainted. And they were interested in doing some research on the whole thing. So there was kind of a junior grade collaboration. And I had a crew that I was paying at the time to get into it. I had money, I had the show, and we were doing this. We didn't let up off of it. So it's a real live mess. A real live mess. I'll go into it one day, but no, Ray had absolutely nothing to do with King. It was the FBI that recruited the sniper team. The sniper team, two men, fired the shot from the fire station, not in one single rogue at the flop house nor the bushes. There was an Overwatch officer, his name was Reddick, Ed Reddick, who later ran for sheriff and was a sometimes client of mine at one point in life. And he gave us a statement that he got double handcuffed and hog-tied and forcibly removed when he would not leave the scene and was trying to protect King. So they had a squad of black sergeants and detectives who were being King's security force. They were told to leave because somebody was about to kill them. They refused. The captain came down and ordered them to leave in person. Otherwise, they'd be fired and they'd have to see civil service come the next Monday. So they left, but Reddick refused to, and he got forcibly removed by 10 white officers who roped his legs together with a rope and double handcuffed him and threw him in a squad car and removed him. And at that point, the word went from the Lorraine Motel over to the fire station that all was clear. They had pre-sighted the weapon in through a small opening on a sliding window on the second floor of the fire station. And what wound up happening is somebody escorted King to the side door, and you can listen to a recording that Dick Gregory made not too long before he died. We had discussed it. He and I used to talk to each other occasionally, and he said he was going to do it. And he told me to listen. I got a preview before they aired it. He asked this individual, so you went and got King and you took him out on the balcony after he wanted to go out the other side of the motel. Is that right? Yeah. Well, why did you duck back in the hotel? Well, I didn't want to get shot. Well, how did you know there's going to be a shooting? Well, I just figured. See, Freudian slip. By the way, King shouldn't have even been in the Lorraine Motel. It was a whole house. It was an hourly rate hotel, and it was on the whole track. And King was supposed to be in the Holiday Inn's Rivermont, which was their flagship hotel at the time, since Holiday Inn was originally incorporated in Memphis. He was integrating the place. And then there was a scene where some of the black folk who were owned got the hots from their white masters that King was not going to come in town. And they said, King can't come here. And some other folks said, we don't need him here. And some other people said he needs to be here. And he himself was reluctant about coming back the second time when he got assassinated. And there was community pressure brought by some people that were complicit in this whole thing about why don't you leave him at the Lorraine Motel, at the Holiday Inn, the Rivermont, instead of bringing him over to the whole track. and it's interesting. It's a civil rights museum now, the Lorraine Motel. In hell, although it lists somebody else as the founder on a brass plaque, that person was not the founder. Myself, Randy Wade, Chuck Scruggs, who was with the local radio station, WDIA, and a lawyer named A.W. Willis, who also, by the way, was one of the two black lawyers that helped smuggle the film of Till's body out of Mississippi, take it to Illinois, got it developed at Walgreens, and got it to the Illinois governor after he escaped from being captured and tortured for several hours in Mississippi. That same A.W. Willis, he got together with us and got all the paperwork done. A guy named, Walter Bailey. There are two Walter Baileys that were in Memphis. One owned the Lorraine Motel, and one was an attorney and a county commissioner. I'm not talking about that one. Well, the Walter Bailey in question wanted to sell it. We had meetings at a guy named, well, we called him Mr. Bobo. He had a club that everybody used to go to. So for several weeks, we had lunch over there hashing about what to do with the place. So he wanted to sell it for economic development, but I convinced him that they ought to make a museum out of it. So they said, sure. A.W. Willis got all the paperwork together, got it sent off, boxed off. Boxed up. We unboxed it to review it. We went over it carefully for lunch, stayed 3 or 4 hours. When everything was clear, he boxed it back up, said, I'm mailing it back off this afternoon. Got back to his office, collapsed, died 4 days later of the advanced effects of pancreatic cancer. His secretary called around to some other law offices, and another somebody named DeArmy Bailey, who happened to be the brother of the attorney Walter Bailey, said, sure, we'll send it off. He sent it off, and they put his name up there as founder of the museum, and he had not a damn thing to do with it. But you see, there's a lot of misinformation. Now, if you go in there now, they have acquired the flop house, and they even have a report in there that's candid. As per what I wound up revealing, it would have been impossible to take the shot from the flop house, and very unlikely for the Bushes. Now, why does everybody think it's from the Bushes? Well, because of the peculiar aspects of the weaponry, the sound reflected off of the Lorraine Motel, and the echo went right over there. We tried it, set up sound equipment, and we duplicated it. So anybody that heard the shot, they wouldn't look to the origins. That's about why they had the material set up, so it would cause confusion in the NAM. Remember, this is when the hot and heavy was going on in the NAM, 67, 68, Tet Offensive. Cronkite had come back and talked about we're being lied to. And by the way, we had memoranda in that record for the King case, James Earl Ray case, from the FBI, and they were discussing whether or not he'd be more dangerous as a dead martyr, which he turned out to be, or as alive somebody who would not get into civil rights, because they didn't give a damn about that, because everybody was going militant. King was irrelevant in 1967, 68, because it was black power, power to the people, black power to
Black Panthers,
people.
and
And BSU and Student Alliance. So what happens is they were worried about two things. One, revitalizing labor. Oh, they had a lot of memos on that one. And two, galvanizing this anti-war movement like they thought he had done to the civil rights thing. So that was why J. Edgar Hoover gave the order we have a copy of, and it ordered all audio and visual surveillance of King to cease, and that was 48 hours before he was shot. They'd even done a table map, you know, these 3D things you see when you go in and they're talking about downtown development. Well, the FBI had one of those done several weeks before. So why do you get one with the Lorraine Motel fire station and all that in, except you're planning something? So they recruited the two snipers, the two-man sniper team from Quantico. They provided the unique ammunition. They got 5,000 rounds on invoice in late December 67, and they got 5 of the rifles that matched the very peculiar ballistic characteristics of what shot the bullet that killed King. So one of them is missing the same month that King is assassinated when they were ordered to return it. That's circumstantial evidence that would have made a case against somebody. Other thing too, on Ray's case, the first judge, the late Preston Battle, gave an unprecedented press conference. He said, I believe Ray is guilty. He entered a plea of guilty, though he has never confessed. See, he never confessed. He always denied it. But I'm very sure he didn't act alone. Now, that Battle was an exercise freak. He ran 5 miles a day, and he didn't show up for court the next day after he gave the press conference. They couldn't find him. So they find his body under his desk in his chambers, and they'd been looking in and out of there all day. So how'd he get there? Next thing, they tried to kill me later when I had the case. That's a long story, lots of excitement, John Wick stuff, real fun from my angle. But it is what it is. They tried to plant 2 kilos of coke in my car that they got caught because some of the detectives were friends of mine and they were keeping a lookout. So, it's all kinds of stuff in there. They don't play nicely with others. And it's dangerous when you go against them. And Biden, by the way, to get back to our original subject, was part of that whole process. Is what it is. So when you really do something, if you're just talking and nothing happens, you haven't said a damn thing. If you are getting dangerous, they try to do something to you. They'll take you out, discredit you, ruin you, everything else that they can get into, unless you stay one step ahead of them.
Well, Judge Brown, one more thing really quick. I saw there was a clip where after Tina Turner died, by the way, I was a huge...
No, it was not after she died. That was years before. And let me explain what that's about.
Yeah, so I was
Let me explain what that's about. I won't get into it, but let's say this. When I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, Ike Turner was one of our heroes. Why? Because he had a Rolls Royce, as did Tina, and he and his homeboy would drive around, his security man, and whenever he saw us, he'd stop and spend several hours talking to us. He'd send his homeboy off to get burgers and fries and Cokes, and he'd talk to us about staying in school, getting your head together, staying crime-free, a man's duty and responsibility. Tina always treated us like shit. She was vile. She cussed at us. She was disrespectful because they both had matching Rolls Royces. And if you waved with him, the window always came down. He'd pull over and he'd talk to you. There was a smile. He'd get out and shake everybody's hand. Tina would cuss you out. And there were some things that I saw with my own 2 eyes. Yeah, there was violence, but it certainly was not one-sided. And some of us knew about what went the other way. So this feminist thing that was popular in Hollywood, they villainized him. And by the way, he was on my show twice. You know what for? Bet you can't guess.
I'm not sure.
He and his new wife had a foundation. You know what it was? If a woman was abused, they financed her escape from her abuser. If she escaped, it was a gift. If she went back, it was a loan. So I talked to him after the stuff aired, and he said, Judge, about that, I said, I know. He said, man, I didn't know they were going to do that. We had our moments, but I didn't know they were going to villainize me like that. None of that's true. I said, look, Mr. Turner, you're one of my heroes and a whole bunch of young guys. We remember you. I'm not from Tennessee. I'm from Los Angeles. Said, I remember when we were in the elementary school and you used to stop and talk to us. I remember when we were in junior high school you used to talk to us. I remember when I was in high school, you would always come up and ask us what we were doing and how was everything, and to encourage us to be men and take care of our responsibility. A lot of us stayed in school. A lot of us didn't go to jail because of you. And I could probably get on the phone, it's 20 some years ago, and call these folk up who would love to come down and thank you. See, so what I was talking about was quite a few years before she died, and it was just out of a sense of justice. Here's somebody that's done me the favor and talked to me, I don't know how many times over the years between when I was like 11, 12 years old, for God's sake. And then when I was in college, and he's always trying to do the right thing, to do just what I do right now as an example, get down in the hood and tell these young men to straighten up. So I owed it to the man to say, hey, it ain't just one-sided. I can remember an instance where we saw some of this violence, me and quite a few young witnesses, and it didn't start with him. And we can talk about some other incidents too. So, I mean, I'm not saying that there was not stuff going on, but it was not like they played in the press. And then there's this other thing too. I got to Memphis more than 50 years ago and got involved in this game. And I not only did legal services, you were interested in my background, poverty law. I did equal employment opportunity for the feds, and I was the first Black prosecutor for the city of Memphis. And I ran the public defender's office, and this is back in the 70s. I was the chief public defender. And in the 70s, late 70s, I was in private practice. And let's put it this way. I represented a whole lot of pimps and hoes back in those days. And I heard from some of the old school pimps and stuff about the game. So I'm not going to get back into that. But years ago, when they started saying, what do you think about, you had him on your show, how did you feel having that? I said, look, man, there's another way. I said, from our perspective, I'm not saying that there is not wrong, but some of what you're calling wrong, we actually witnessed, we young men growing up in what became South Central LA. We also owe that man a debt of gratitude because he was always out in the neighborhood telling us to be straight, showing us how to do the right thing, telling us what it was, and getting on us. And always he'd come up and remember your name and shake hands. And you just a little kid, and here's this superstar coming up and saying, hey, it's okay. You can be a success. So, yeah, that's what that was. And I don't mean any insult to the woman, but, it ain't all one-sided. And I also later got exposed to these clown witches in Hollywood who had a hate man agenda that still have an agenda they're trying to set up where you're trying to destroy manhood. And that's like, if you're a woman hater, you're a goddamn fool and something's wrong with you. You're a man hater, you're also a damn fool and something's wrong with you. And I was not going to be complicit in going along with that man hating crap, since amongst other things, where I grew up in South Central LA, a whole lot of folk I knew got killed off, and it ain't the girls doing the drive-bys, it's the young boys, the young would-be men who weren't trained to be men who do all the drive-by shootings, and that's still the case. Right now, Memphis is murder capital of the United States of America, and nobody's doing a damn thing to go out there and do what Ike did for us, which is tell these young folk there's another way. Now, that's what is going on. I was a playground director in Los Angeles at Trinity Avenue Elementary School. Dr. Cliff Stewart, also known as Clifford Stewart, sensei, grandmaster martial artist, Black Belt magazine for 15 years, said he was probably the most dangerous human alive in North America. Dr. Ron Chappelle, who was a playground director, a master martial artist, and me, We ran Trinity Avenue Elementary School, and you know at least two of our students. One of them is the late singer Barry White. We knew as a skinny little 12-year-old on our playground. We taught him what Ike taught us. All right. And he made it. His mama went along with it. We had Tookie Williams, who co-founded the Crips in Los Angeles and was the last person executed on California's death row. We taught him what Ike taught us. See, all three of us experienced Ike when we were growing up, which is why we all went to college. We took martial arts and we became Dr. Brown, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Chappelle, and we did a whole lot of stuff. So Tookie Williams should have had his death penalty commuted, but the governor used to work out with him at Gold's Gym. So I guess he couldn't have anything to do with that and let him go ahead and get executed. But he wrote 6 children's books where he talked about being a man and dealing with your obligations. And even though he started the Crips, helped start them, even though they were some thugs, he did do one damn thing that I have to commend him for. He took our lesson to heart about protecting women. And he always would protect women when they did stuff. Like a lot of times they'd have concerts at the LA Coliseum. And my brother sat there and organized them. He was the promoter. And sometimes Tookie Williams would say, Coach Stewart, you need some help with keeping this thing safe for the ladies? And he'd make sure stuff was safe for the ladies. See, there's a fallout on this whole thing. So it isn't all black and white, crystal clear, and all this bullshit game plan that Hollywood's trying to run on everybody. It's some righteous stuff. And the same people that did this are the same people that ultimately brought you, bail out Walt Disney and ABC. They had what was $1.25 billion worth of debt they could not pay off. They couldn't pay the interest on behind a lawsuit that they got whacked with and lost. Black Panther.
Judge Brown, thank you. Just because the sake of time, like you'll have to come back on and we'll have to talk like more about this.
Okay,
this is a lot.
Now I'll give you a homework assignment.
Go for it.
Rewatch Black Panther and tell me what's wrong with that movie. And if you need somewhere to start, go to the very end of it where the black men and black women of the tribe are in active hot combat trying to kill each other. And then
I'll do that, Judge Brown.
There's so much wrong with that movie, but understand that part of this controversy we've been talking about had a great deal to do with the same people. Now, I love Tina's music. I mean, ain't nobody perfect. I mean, black women and black men have been having conflicts for days, and everybody sometimes has a problem with their significant other. And Ike and Tina had their thing for a long time. They made a good team. They made some good music. But I'm just saying, I was not going to let anybody get away with making it a one-man villain show. It went both ways. So respect for the dead, yeah. I'm sure she reformed, and there's some other bad stuff in her history too, and some in his. Some of it was real. So I'm not getting on anybody. I'm just trying to get the record straight historically, because what kind of punk would I be for somebody to have done this much for myself and other young black men and not speak up for them, saying there's another side? Now, that's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to down women. Women need to be protected. I die for all of you, even if you don't want me to, but I'm standing prepared. Now, that's what men need to do. And that's what we need in our community. Masculinity. We need to man the hell up and start taking care of our business where we live.
Thank you so much, Judge Brown. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, ma'am. And by the way, I enjoyed the conversation too. Don't get me riled up off of this one, but you know, don't do this to me next time, you know. And by the way, one other point. I got to bring this out. This thing about this famous TV judge sexually assaulted me and it wasn't Judge Mathis. Wasn't Judge Brown either. You know who it was? The name of the person was Koch, Ed Koch, mayor of New York, who had a brand new show launched the same time as Moesha with the same studio that woman was involved with. He did it. He talked about it with others. The studio had a problem with it. And when it happened, I actually, on the day when it happened, was having a hearing on James Earl Ray versus Martin Luther King. So it wasn't me.
Ooh.
Now, Ed Koch, mayor of New York, who had a gay boyfriend that he denounced when he became mayor, and he was trying to show he was manly by trying to sit there and make the move on the lady. So I don't even know the woman. I wouldn't recognize her if I saw her, but it wasn't me. It was Ed Koch. Now, why somebody assumed it was me, I don't know. That just says something sick inside your head. But my thing is, I love women. I die for women. Most of my friends are women. My chief of staff is a woman. Out of all my lawyers, 60% of them are female. Half of my medical staff is female that deals with me. I'm the equality guy. I treat you like you are. So that said, that's something, it goes that way. So just clear the record. Sorry that I had to go take that extra length of time, but you got me on here. The judge
All right,
is in
Judge
the
Brown.
house.
Thank
Now,
you
it's
so
been
much.
charming idea. I'd appreciate the opportunity. And by the way, JJB in 2023. Now, JJB2023.com. And if you put me back in and a vote for me being a vote for yourself, you take over the Memphis city government if you live here, and if you don't, finance it, because it'll be a place where you can come, where all the action's going to be shortly. And if you want to celebrate that, it's summer, you can go to jjbbbq.com and you can order yourself some of the best barbecue sauce available in the United States of America. And it's good stuff. So, hi, Brian, gotta go. This has been Judge Joe. I gotta get on out of here. So I do fear I'm the one that ran. So call me, catch me when you can.
Thanks, Judge Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, guys. Interesting conversation there. That's why I said he'll have to come back so we can hear more about this. But the conversation, especially about Dr. King, a lot of people contacted me and said, if you're having him on, please ask him about that. So interesting conversation. We have 3 stories I do want to discuss tonight. So first and foremost, let me go ahead and give a shout out to those of you who are patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies. Look at all the Sabbies. And don't forget members. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for OG Molten One, Elise Cirante, Bruce Jackson, and Donique. Thank you guys so much. You can see all of their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And I already showed the thumbnail earlier. So let's go ahead and get into this first story. Dr. Cornel West is being smeared yet again, this time by David Axelrod. Now, David Axelrod, we've talked about him before. He comes from that Obama administration. He's terrible, terrible guy. I don't want to get into the whole thing. But David Axelrod made a statement saying that Cornel West could actually help Donald Trump because of the fact that Dr. West is running third party. Now, we heard this before when Jill Stein ran in 2016. They're doing the fear mongering again. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from Case Study QB.
Tonight, risky business. Former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod, warning Biden could be facing a third-party spoiler, specifically from Green Party candidate Cornel West. Axelrod tweeting, quote, "In 2016, the Green Party played an outsized role in tipping the election to Donald Trump. Now, with Cornel West as their likely nominee, they could easily do it again. Risky business."
This is actually false, and I need to interrupt this here. This statement here from David Axelrod saying 2016, the Green Party played an outsized role in tipping the election to Donald Trump. That is actually false. And that is a lie that is constantly being told by the Democratic Party, by these DNC goons like David Axelrod, people like Hillary Clinton. That is a lie. You remember at one point in time, they tried to say it was Bernie Sanders' fault that Donald Trump won. Let me explain to you why this is not true. If you look at the numbers, and if everyone who voted for Jill Stein in 2016, if all those votes went to Hillary Clinton and all of the Gary Johnson votes went to Donald Trump still wins. This is the piece that they don't tell you. And this is important for people to understand. Those voters, those third-party voters, those are not spoiler candidates. Those voters, if there weren't third-party candidates, if there wasn't a Jill Stein, if there wasn't a Gary Johnson, those voters in turn do not say, I am going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Those voters stay home. And we have to continue to reiterate this message because I'm so sick and tired of the Democratic Party saying this. These establishment people, they do this to put fear into you so that you will be scared again and go, oh no, Donald Trump, I guess I have to go ahead and support Joe Biden after all. This is a lie. This is not true. So again, the third party voters in turn do not give that support to the Democrat or the Republican. They stay home, which means that Trump still wins. Now, instead of blaming people like Dr. West for running Green Party, maybe you should point your finger at Joe Biden and blame him for being such a weak ass president. That's who people should be blaming.
This comes as less than 40% of Americans say they view Biden or Trump favorably. Almost 1 in 4 voters, in fact, say they don't like either candidate, which is
this right here lets you know. Favorable views of candidates, 39% Joe Biden, 38% Donald Trump, 24% say neither. And it is this neither that you need to pay attention to, because those are the people, if they do vote, they're most likely going to vote for a libertarian candidate, a Green Party candidate, or an independent candidate. And those neither are not going to change their mind and say, oh no, I don't want to get Trump. Let me vote for Joe Biden. People have to understand that.
a key part of Cornel West's pitch.
I just thought about all the creative, imaginative, courageous fellow citizens that I meet, and how do we end up with the two candidates? Trump on the one hand, Biden on the other. Good God. With Brother Trump, you've got a gangster in the objective sense. And with Biden, again, I love the brother, but he's a hypocrite. And he's pushing toward World War III when you talk about what he has to say about China and Russia.
So this is important for people to understand. The reason why you have these candidates, these third-party candidates, is because, number one, they are not a part of the duopoly. They know it's corrupt. They know that these parties belong to Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. So people should have the right and the opportunity to vote for someone outside of that duopoly. Now, there are 2 clips here I want to show you. There's part 1 and a part 2. And they're talking again about Cornel West joining the presidential race and if he could attract GOP votes. Listen to this, because it's 2 parts, and pay attention to what the gentleman in the yellow tie says. He actually hits it on point here.
To that point that you're both making, she was then asked about Cornel West, and she referenced that. So I think we have that sound as well.
What do you make of Cornel West campaign?
You know, I think Dr. West has an incredible history in this country. What he fights for, what he gives voice to is incredibly important. And the ability for us to talk about issues that, frankly, mainstream Democrats are often too afraid to touch.
I mean, Joe, that's essentially what you were saying. I mean, and you're...
We're going to pause here for just a second because I want to add something to that. We're going to show the rest of that video in a second. AOC said that Dr. West has the respectable history in this country, right? And Joe Biden doesn't. But yeah, you're going to see later on in tonight's show that she's choosing to endorse Joe Biden and not the candidate that has the respectable history. Now, she knows she can't come too harshly at Dr. West because people will look at her sideways. The progressive base that she still has left, the few that are still hanging on, that still believe that she's going to fight for things. If she comes out heavily against Dr. West, those people will finally see through. Oh my God, people were right. She really is corrupt. She really has changed, yada, yada. So she knows she has to say something good about Dr. West. Now take what she just told you and then apply that to the story later on when we talk about her choosing to support Joe Biden. Now let's go back a little bit here.
Touch.
I mean, Joe, that's essentially what you were saying. I mean, and you're both agreeing with each other, right? So what is the potential, not just for Cornel West to maybe peel away some of those voters and maybe even beyond people of color, right? We're talking about working class voters, full stop, in this country who are looking for somebody to talk about their issues. Could he also pull some away from if it's a Donald Trump as the nominee?
Well, look, you see even now with somebody like RFK Jr., who is starting to attract some traction from some Republican voters. So there is a fervor in America for people who are willing to speak to the populist ambitions of the nation, but also the core bedrock actual deficiencies within our Main Street construct. So yes, I think if Dr. West was being wise, he'd probably just abandon everything he's doing everywhere and move to Iowa. There's a long tradition of grassroots support, particularly more in the populist and more liberal-leaning bent in those Democratic caucuses. So he should be going to all 99 of those counties and then go back again, The South Carolina primary has already been rigged. Certainly Democrats trying to.
Did you hear what he just said? And I'm surprised they actually let him say this on CNN. Listen to this piece right here. Listen to what he says about South Carolina.
And then go back again. The South Carolina primary has already been rigged.
He just said on CNN, the South Carolina primary has already been rigged. I'm surprised they let someone say that on CNN. So people need to know, like, people are taking off the blinders, guys. Taking off the blinders here. Let's pay attention.
Certainly Democrats trying to figure out whether they're going to move it up or leave it where it is. So there's not a lot of oxygen there where, again, they say they know Joe. I think that's where he could have some impact. But I think to your point, there is a broad consensus from all Americans that we want to have somebody that speaks to the fact that we're spending money on wars abroad. We're not dealing with the fact that we've got public housing in crisis here at home.
Now, why is this conversation important? 2 years ago, you would have not seen this gentleman on CNN to give that same talking point that he just gave. Remember, CNN got new management and they're trying to be, I guess, a little bit more middle of the road now and offer voices from those who are Republican as well. So you're hearing things that you normally would not have heard on CNN. Now, this is part two. Listen to this piece as well.
And if I could just add very quickly, there needs to be a lane, I think AOC was speaking to this, for a Bernie Sanders type candidate. Someone who's going to pull the party and hold Democrats and hold them accountable for a lot of those issues that we haven't necessarily talked about. But if you look at what Bernie Sanders did, look at the impact he's had on how we've talked about college and the college affordability today.
There needs to be a Bernie Sanders type candidate, but not through the Democratic Party. And that's what Dr. West is. But he goes further than Bernie Sanders in reference to his campaign platform. He's pushing issues that Bernie Sanders did not have the guts to talk about, or he didn't talk about it in the right way. So I think this is important for people to understand. Now, the problem, though, again, if you hold on to what AOC just said, and when we get to this story later on, you'll understand why this is also problematic. If she feels that there should be a Bernie Sanders type of candidate, then why is she not supporting or endorsing the Bernie Sanders type of candidate? Let's continue. Let's go up just a little bit more. There we go.
In the college affordability today, how we talked about healthcare. There needs to be that voice in this conversation. And if Cornel West is going to play any part in this, that's the voice, that's the lane that I think he occupies. And to your point about the South Carolina primary, what Joe Biden can do, since that's likely the first primary, is start talking about those issues early, set the tone, and hope that carries into the general election. But speaking on it once.
talking about Joe Biden talking about those issues early really doesn't really change anything because he's already been president. He's already the incumbent, and he hasn't been able to, or not be able, he has not fulfilled any of those types of policies. He's against Medicare for all. He's lying on Twitter right now, saying everybody should have health care. Like this, everyone can see through this time around. But he's already had time if he wanted to try to implement those policies. Instead, he vocally said, no, I would not implement those policies. So this gentleman, the Democratic strategist, saying he should start talking about those issues early on. Well, he has talked about those issues, but he's talked about it in an unfavorable way. He hasn't talked about those issues saying he supports it. He's talked about those issues saying that he would veto it. That's the problem. So now if Joe Biden switches his tone, it looks suspect to people.
But speaking on it once, letting it go, not addressing it again, is a losing proposition.
And that's why I see so many more African American men, bit by bit, slowly moving to the right, because I think at some point they're willing to consider alternatives because they feel as if their needs have been neglected for so long.
Joe, Basil, great to have you.
And that piece right there is very important. The number of African Americans that have been leaving the Democratic Party, because again, people have felt neglected by the Democratic Party. Democratic Party says that they're the party that Black people, or they care about Black people, but they haven't done anything in reference to the Black community. They're not doing anything in reference to the working class community. So eventually it gets to the point where people will start to pull away. Now, why is this an issue in reference to Dr. West? The Democratic Party obviously selects the candidate. We've talked about this before on the show in reference to the DNC fraud lawsuit. We talked about how the Democratic Party is a corporation and how they argued in court that they actually do not owe you a fair election. I want to take you back to 2016, because for the people like David Axelrod saying that Dr. West is a problem running third party, for the outlets like The Nation or Jacobin saying he should be running through the Democratic Party, let me show you why he is not running through the Democratic Party. This was 2016. Why does Sanders do better than Clinton against Donald Trump? I just want to jog your memory just a little bit. Remember this. According to the latest NBC News /SurveyMonkey weekly election tracking poll, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is now only slightly ahead of businessman Donald Trump in a general election matchup among registered voters, 47% to 45%. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, however, continues to perform much better against the presumptive Republican nominee than Clinton and is currently beating him by a full 12 points, 52% to 40%. Why does Sanders do better than Clinton against Trump? Look at the poll. Look at the graph here. If the 2016 presidential election were being held today, again, there's Clinton in blue, Trump is red, right? So you'll see that she's really close to him. But when we go to Bernie Sanders, if the 2016 presidential election were being held today, Bernie Sanders was way above Donald Trump. This article was released, again, this was 2016. This was June 6th of 2016. And these polls here were from May, right? So they're showing you the big difference. So if Bernie Sanders was beating Donald Trump in a head-to-head, according to the polls, and Hillary Clinton, if we go back, was like neck and neck here with Donald Trump, the problem is not the fact that candidates like Jill Stein ran third party. The problem is that the DNC chose the losing candidate. Let's say this one more time. The DNC chose the losing candidate. They chose Hillary Clinton, who was neck and neck with Donald Trump at this point in time, instead of choosing Bernie Sanders, who was ahead, way ahead of Donald Trump. The reason why Hillary Clinton lost is because the DNC chose the losing candidate. Because they chose the candidate that was status quo. They chose the candidate that would support the war complex. They chose the candidate that would back corporate interest, even if that candidate was technically the losing candidate. That's who they selected, and that's why she lost. So this is not Jill Stein's fault. This is not Bernie Sanders' fault. That's the DNC's fault. Anytime Bernie Sanders had won every county in West Virginia and they chose to give, the superdelegates chose to give the state to Hillary Clinton anyway. They tried to force Hillary Clinton onto the people. Even when the polls were telling you that was not what the people wanted. And that's why they lost. And that is why someone like Dr. West should not run through the Democratic Party. Because if they did it to Bernie, they'll do it to Dr. West as well. They have done it to Dennis Kucinich. They'll do it to anyone who's not for that status quo. So for the people that are writing in all these corny outlets like The Nation and Jacobin, pushing this narrative on people, saying he should run as a Democrat, I'm here to let you know, those people know this game too. Everything I just told you, those people are very well aware of this as well. So what's their angle? Think about it. Go to some of the comments. We're going to go to some of the super chats and then we'll get to the next story. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. No, you jackass, it ain't nearly enough for you. Judge Joe Brown told the scamming stepmom on his show back in 08 or 09. Love that scene. It's funny. Thank you, Roger. Sabby doing her best not to break out laughing. Thank you, Dr. Nick. Best comedy of the day. Thank you for the super chat, Roderick. Get 'em judged. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chris. Some golden content today, Sabby. Thank you. Thank you, Passionate Rebellion. Sabby has endless patience and grace because, Lord, I couldn't do it. Thank you for the super chat, The Traveler. Biden is to the right of Reagan on criminal justice. Reagan vetoed his crime bills because they were too extreme even for Reagan. Interesting. Shout out to Seth for becoming a new Sabby member. Thank you, Caleb. Sabby, blink twice if you're okay. I'm okay. I think I was just shocked. I was just shocked by some of the things I heard. Like, I didn't know a lot of that stuff, especially the history information about MLK. Like, it was really shocking. And the laptop stories. Thank you for the super chat, Phantomas. Joe Brown, I told Ike not to slap Tina, but he didn't have his masculinity hat on, and poor Tina had to deal with a defeated man with no dang masculinity hat, but now we got one. Phantomus. And thank you, Tenten. Sabby, you have the ultimate patience, and I applaud you for letting him speak so much, even though many others wouldn't. My favorite YouTuber. Oh, thank you, Tenten. Yeah, I try not to interrupt guests. Like, I really do try not to do that. Okay. We're going into our next story, and this one is about Joe Biden. If you have not heard, this was announced just like a day or so ago. Joe Biden has made the horrible, horrible decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. Now, why is this an issue? Some of you may be wondering, what is a cluster bomb? Let's go ahead and get into that first. What is the cluster bomb? The controversial weapon the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. Let's get into this part. What is a cluster bomb? A cluster bomb is a type of weapon that is designed to disperse smaller bombs over a large area. They are also known as cluster munitions, with smaller bombs referred to as submunitions or bomblets. In other words, it is not a bomb that can actually target one specific spot. The problem why this is so incredibly dangerous, obviously, if it cannot target one specific spot, that means it spreads, right? So there are going to be casualties with cluster bombs, civilian casualties, more civilian casualties because of the type of bomb that it is. So why would Joe Biden choose to send something like this to Ukraine? Well, part of it has to do with the fact that I feel that they are becoming very desperate. I feel that they realize, and they're not telling you this, but I will, they realize that Ukraine is not winning this war with Russia. You have to remember that Russia also has a powerful friend next door to them called China. And if they need to knock on that door, they can knock on that door. They have a relationship. They're a part of BRICS. So this is an act of desperation because, it looks some kind of way after you sent all that billions of dollars over there and then you're losing. Look some type of way. So they're choosing to send those to hopefully swing things in the other direction. Now, Joe Biden had an interview recently about this particular issue, and I want to show you his response in reference to that. Like, this is just terrible.
It was a very difficult decision on my part. And by the way, I discussed this with our allies, discussed this with our friends up on the Hill. And we're in a situation where Ukraine continues to be brutally attacked across the board by munitions, by these cluster munitions that have dud rates that are very, very low, very high, that are a danger to civilians, number one. Number two, the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. And so what I finally did, took the recommendation of the Defense Department to, not permanently, but to allow for, in this transition period where we get more 155 weapons, these shells for the Ukrainians, to provide them with something that has a very low dud rate. And it's not used in civilian areas. They're trying to get through those trenches and stop those tanks from rolling. And so, but it was not an easy decision, and we're not signatories to that agreement, but it took me a while to be convinced to do it. But the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop the Russians now keep them from stopping the Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't, and I think they needed them.
I'm going to find a way to say this the best way possible. I'm not sure that I believe that the allies are actually okay with this, as he mentioned in that video. I'm not sure I really believe that. And for him to say, well, the defense pushed him to do this, so to speak. You're the president. Say no. The problem is that cluster bombs are considered to be a war crime. And in fact, it was actually Jen Psaki herself who confirmed that when it was mentioned that these were being used by Russia. Now, there's a clip here of Tulsi Gabbard on Fox News, and they address just that. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to the Democratic Party. And this is why I continue to push this type of message that people have to understand. They're not better than anybody else. The same people that they criticize, the same people that they point fingers towards, the same way they condemn people like Putin and Russia and all that, they're not any better. When the US government does it, it seems to be okay. Let's get into this clip here and you'll see what I mean.
Tulsi, and I want to get your take on what's happening now in Ukraine, because the Biden administration has announced they're sending cluster bombs to Ukraine. The move's highly controversial. In fact, Biden's own White House once said that using these kinds of bombs would be considered a war crime. Watch.
There are reports of illegal cluster bombs and vacuum bombs being used by the Russians. If that's true, what is the next step of this administration? And is there a red line for how much violence will be tolerated against civilians in this manner that's illegal and potentially a war crime?
It would be. I don't have any confirmation of that. We have seen the reports. If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime.
So
I hope everyone heard that loud and clear. It's illegal and it is essentially a war crime. That is coming from the former press secretary herself, Jen Psaki. They had a problem with it then because it was supposedly Russia doing it. But now it seems to be okay for the US government to do it. And more people need to call this out. And by the way, it's not just me. It's not just Tulsi Gabbard. Even Barbara Lee is calling this out. There's other Democrat politicians who are calling out Biden's decision to do this. Let's go on.
So it was a war crime for Vladimir Putin, but it's okay for us to send it to the Ukrainians in escalation.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, Pete. Their hypocrisy of rules that apply to others, but not for them, making decisions based on their own selfish desire for more power, their political interests. The cold callousness of this decision by the Biden administration today reminds me of what then Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said when she was asked about whether the price was worth it when the U.S. sanctions against Iraq killed over 500,000 children. And her response was, yes, we think the price was worth it. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want, believing that the end justifies the means, even though this decision today all but guarantees that for decades to come, American-made cluster bombs will be the cause of Ukrainian casualties and children losing limbs long after this Russia-Ukraine war has finished.
So these cluster bombs are not just going to obviously hurt civilians in Russia. Remember, like I said, they don't align with a simple target. It spreads out, so it dispersed. So that means that other people are going to be hurt and are going to be affected. So what you have to understand is that also means that there are going to be casualties of Ukrainian civilians as well. Now, I'm sorry, but if Zelensky cares as much about his people as he says that he does, he would try to limit or prevent any civilian casualties that he could, especially if it's coming from his own army. If Joe Biden and the rest of the US government cared about Ukrainian lives as much as they claim that they do, they would not send cluster bombs to Ukraine because they know that that could also hurt civilian Ukrainians. And I am pointing this out to you because of this. I'm pointing this out to you to show you that it's not about the people. It's not about saving those people. It's not about helping those people. This is about supporting the military-industrial complex. And this is about a possible regime change in Russia to remove someone like Vladimir Putin. Now, Vladimir Putin is not a saint. Vladimir Putin has his issues as well. But the United States government should not participate in any of these regime changes the same as it has been doing in the past. This has been a big issue. And that's what this is about. And I think this is a cover for it. By the time that this is all over, how many people in Ukraine are going to be left? How many of the civilians, the kids, the women and the children that they claim they care so much about, how many of them are going to be left not injured or not killed? But it doesn't matter to Zelensky because BlackRock came in, so it's more money. Where is all this money going? All the billions that went over there, and I'm supposed to sit here and believe they're like, oh, well, he said they're running out of ammunition. That's all done. Really? How much more? How much more? If this country is destroyed, where are the remaining people supposed to go? It's all about money, all about money. And the US government trying to once again police the world and exert its power. That's what this is about. Monique said it's only a war crime when countries we don't like do it. Bingo. Bingo. Lana says, why not peace? Why not peace? Because peace is not profitable. This is a huge issue, you guys. A huge issue. And what was interesting to me, I lost the tweet I had with Barbara Lee. I don't know what happened to her. But what was really interesting to me is that Barbara Lee to say, I don't agree with this. This is dangerous. Da, 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 da. You didn't think it was dangerous when all you guys kept voting for, yeah, just keep sending the money, keep sending the weapons over to Ukraine. You didn't think that was dangerous. You guys didn't think it was dangerous to give these weapons to people, to the Azov battalion, to Nazis over there in Ukraine, and then some of the weapons have ended up in Africa? You weren't worried about it then. But now all of a sudden, oh no, this is a bridge just a little too far. It's a mess. Most of the politicians in DC are totally fine with war. Thank you for the super chat, Black Thoughts. Let us virtue signal to the last Ukrainian. Right. How many of these people are going to be alive when this is all over? Don't be surprised if they're trying to make this into another Afghanistan. Don't be surprised. I'll go with that comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then we'll go to our last story, guys. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. When Yellow Tie Brother was talking about West going to Iowa because South Carolina has been rigged, but that's a Democrat primary thing, that has nothing to do with West, who's third party. I just hope Black people registering independent. If 70 to 90% of Blacks under 50 register independent, or 50% of all Blacks, we'd crash through 50% threshold. Yeah, I'm a registered independent. If you're still registered with the Democratic Party, change your registration to independent. Join me. I did mine right online. Boop. Join me. Leave that party. This is a mess. And speaking of leaving that party, this story here with AOC endorsing Joe Biden for 2024. This is the perfect example that shows you that the Democratic Party cannot change. It doesn't matter who you put into the party. If they're going into the party, they are going to go along with the corporate Democrats, or they are going to risk losing their seat. So most likely they're going to go along with the corporate Democrats. Otherwise, they end up like Dennis Kucinich or Cynthia McKinney. And AOC is just one of those people as well. Now, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. It says, discussing how significant it is for AOC to endorse Biden at this stage of the primary election. It pulls a lot of her supporters in the direction of Joe Biden and away from someone else. Listen to how pathetic this is.
I think he's done quite well, given the limitations that we have. I do think that there are ebbs and flows.
Will you be supporting Joe Biden?
Before we get to that part, listen to this one more time. She's talking about Joe Biden.
I think he's done quite well, given the limitations that we have.
She thinks that Joe Biden has done quite well given the limitations that they have. What limitations? When Joe Biden won, the Democrats had the House, the Democrats had the Senate, for the most part had the Senate, but the Democrats had the House and the White House. So what were the limitations? What limitation is there against Joe Biden in reference to Medicare for all when he announces that he would veto it if it comes across his desk? Who's limiting him there? That's a choice on his own. What were the limitations in reference to canceling student loan debt? There were no limitations except for the fact that Joe Biden didn't follow instructions. The fact that Joe Biden could have done it by executive order. Joe Biden was supposed to do it through the Higher Education Act, and he didn't, and did it through the HEROES Act, and that's why we're in this mess right now. So who limited him in reference to that? Who made that limitation? When they tell you that Joe Biden has done quite well, notice they never give examples. How has he done well? Has he done well? You talk about the unemployment rate. They leave out the fact, they said the unemployment rate is really down. They leave out the fact that 90% of the unemployment rate is Black Americans right now. That report just was released. They're not mentioning it. AOC doesn't mention it. Jamal Bowman won't tell you that. They leave it out. The economy is terrible. People are still dealing with inflation. How has he done well? This is just AOC just parroting talking points to help continue her career.
I do think that there are ebbs and flows.
Will you be supporting Joe Biden for re-election?
I believe given that field, yes.
How significant is it that she is
just unequivocally, yes. We should have never, I want to be very clear, we should have never, ever supported this woman. We should have never canvassed for her. We should have never phone banked for her. You should have never donated any money to her. She is a fraud. Justice Democrats was basically a money grab. Think about this. All of these people, all these so-called progressive candidates that got in, that were supposed to push back against the Democratic Party and fight for these progressive issues, they've all laid over and basically given it all over to Joe Biden, say, yes, we got to support Joe Biden. These people are nothing in reference to progressive anymore. They don't matter anymore. You see what I'm saying? This was just a money grab. That's all Justice Democrats really was. Because what did we win? In reference to policy, nothing in reference to national policy has been passed that's progressive. Progressive policies have only passed on the local level, not on the national level. So we really haven't won shit. And don't come to me and say, well, canceling student loan debt. It's not canceled. He didn't even do it right. Don't come to me and say, well, it was the squad that pressured Joe Biden. Nah, boo. The pressure came from the student debt cancellation activists who don't even work in DC. It was the activist organizations that pressured Joe Biden. So give me a break. Listen to this.
Saying that at this stage.
Right. No, it's incredibly significant because in some ways it pulls a lot of her supporters in the direction of Joe Biden and away from thinking that maybe we should be looking at somebody else. Because look, Joe.
I want you to hear again what he just said. This is a very mask off moment. Again, this is the Democratic strategist.
Significant because in some ways it pulls a lot of her supporters in the direction of Joe Biden and away from thinking that.
I'm going to translate this for you because I'm going to say what he's not going to say. When he says it pulls her supporters into the direction of Joe Biden, I'm going to translate that to it pulls AOC supporters to the right. It pulls them away from that progressive left and it pulls them further to the right. And it teaches them just to accept the status quo because this is what we have. It teaches them to dismiss and ignore people who are running against Joe Biden and running on progressive issues. Because Joe Biden is the incumbent, you got to ignore those other people. That's what it teaches them. It teaches them that people like AOC and the other members of the squad are phonies. They have no cojones. They have no gusto, nothing. They went into DC and they just became paper pushers. That's it. Don't come to me and say, they're not activists. They're political careerists now. That's it. AOC is on her way to become the next Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi at one point in time was for universal health care, but she had to change her stance on that so that she could expand her career in politics. And that's exactly where AOC is trying to head herself. How do you look at yourself in the morning? It is absolutely embarrassing. You are supposed to be champion Medicare for all. Don't even come speaking nothing about Medicare for all. Don't do no interview talking about Medicare for all, because when you have candidates who are running on Medicare for all on their platforms and you say publicly on Pod Save America, which is a DNC shill podcast, that you are supporting and endorsing Joe Biden, you don't care about everybody in this country having health care. You don't care about everybody in this country being able to pay these damn medical bills. You care about your seat and your book that you're going to write. You care about being friends with people in DC. You don't care about your constituents in the Bronx. Miss me with all of that. That is embarrassing. It is utterly embarrassing to see the regressive candidates here just openly outright endorse. How the hell you go from endorsing Bernie Sanders when he ran against Joe Biden in 2020 to endorsing Joe Biden? The fuck is wrong with you? Don't give her no more money. When she come back to you, you live in her district, don't give her no money. Don't donate to her campaign. None of them. Let those motherfuckers fall, okay? Let them fall. And people need to run against them. People need to run as independents, third party, run against them because they don't deserve to be there.
Maybe we should be looking at somebody else. Because look, Joe Biden.
Maybe we should be looking at Cornel West.
Maybe we should look at Cornel. So a lot of folks will argue Joe Biden's numbers are soft. I don't think there is necessarily a concern that a lot of voters will go and vote for Cornel West, but it may tamp down turnout because you don't have that sort of movement candidate in a Joe Biden. And to everything.
The only thing that is going to decrease turnout for Joe Biden is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is horrible, horrible. You cannot miss me with all of this. Horrible candidate, can barely talk, can barely string together a sentence. And I cannot believe that they would go along with this bullshit. Horrible candidate. This guy too. It's a hot mess.
Now, because you don't have that sort of movement candidate in a Joe Biden. And to everything you said, it's absolutely right.
The movement candidate is Dr. West. And this is him admitting to you that Joe Biden is not the movement candidate. This is him admitting to you that Joe Biden ain't really about nothing. He's just there. And so because he's there, you're just supposed to go and support him just because he's already there. He ain't about nothing. Nothing.
In terms of communities of color, particularly for the Black and brown communities, that Cornel West speaks to a lot of those concerns. Joe Biden needs to take some of that on the campaign trail.
So
Joe Biden isn't going to take that to the campaign trail because Joe Biden doesn't know how to speak to those concerns because he hasn't lived it. He hasn't experienced it. And quite frankly, he don't give a fuck about Black people. Did he listen to those concerns when Black families went to the White House and said, can you do something about the police brutality? His response was, we're going to give the police more money. Joe Biden don't care about Black communities. Joe Biden care about his pocket. That's it. The Hill was the first to put out the article. AOC backs Biden for re-election. This is just, it's so embarrassing. So disgusting. Representative AOC, one of the most vocal progressives on Capitol Hill, has backed President Biden's re-election bid. AOC told Pod Save America that she would support Biden, who faces two long shot challengers. Look how they phrase it. Long shot challengers in the 2024 Democratic primary. It goes on to say, two Democrats have launched 2024 bids against Biden, self-help author Marianne Williamson and prominent, you see how they do this? Anti-jab activist RFK Jr. Notice they never mention RFK Jr. as environmental lawyer. Boy, I tell you. The president is polling well ahead of both candidates, and the Democratic National Committee has said it does not plan to hold any primary debates. It doesn't matter if he's polling ahead those candidates. What matters is if he's polling against Donald Trump. You see, this is where they missed the plot. You missed me with this. Even if he is polling ahead of RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, he is not polling ahead of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is ahead of him. I don't know what else to tell people. Like, I really don't. It just, She goes on to say, there are areas that I think were quite strong. He came right out of the gate with the America Rescue Plan. He didn't come right out of the gate with that. In fact, that came from Bernie Sanders, from what I remember. And that plan didn't sure as hell didn't rescue me. Did it rescue you? Did it rescue you guys? Notice she won't mention how he kicked people off of unemployment. She won't mention that. And of course, the Inflation Reduction Act was a massive step in terms of our climate agenda. No, she won't even mention the fact how the Inflation Reduction Act, in reference to the climate issue, that it gave more money and more leniency to fossil fuel companies. She won't even mention about the Willow Project. So if you really cared about the climate and your Green New Deal as much as she said that she would, why would you be backing Joe Biden when he's approved drilling permits off the shore of Alaska in reference to the Willow Project? Because you don't really care about the climate. She don't really care about no Green New Deal, which came from the Green Party, by the way. They don't care about none of this. And Glenn Greenwald called it out. AOC, who ran her 2018 primary campaign based on a vow to wage war against the Democratic Party DC establishment, announces her support for Joe Biden's re-election in the Democratic Party primary on the day he announced cluster bombs for Ukraine. The same freaking day. The same day. I told you this woman was a fraud. I tried to tell you back when that she wasn't just no damn bartender, that she had owned a startup. This has been a joke, and they played you. Justice Democrats played you. And she took money from working class people. Such a joke. Nick is 100% correct about this. There is not enough anger at Bernie Sanders and AOC for taking working class money, lying to desperate people, and selling them out in a malicious fashion. 100%. Because Nick quit his job to canvass for Bernie Sanders. And it's true. There's not enough anger in reference to that. There just isn't. The fact that people can still say, well, they're doing the best that they can. No, they're not. Doing the best that you can is not endorsing Joe Biden. You would have been better off keeping your mouth shut instead of opening it if that was going to be the response. This is such a joke. This is a joke. Justice Democrats is a freaking scam. And they took money from people. And so I'm just saying it is what it is, that this has just been nothing but a money grab. None of these people were working class to begin with in the first damn place. They were PMCs who tried to pretend like they were working class through Justice Democrats, and then they got elected, and who did they betray? The working class. Miss me with all of it. All of it. I don't know what to tell anybody else who continues to support them at this point. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it's because you believe that you have to support them, because then you'll still know that you have someone there that's really fighting for you. No, they are progressive in name only. They're not progressive when it comes to policy and action anymore. They are hypocrites. Cori Bush out here wrote a damn book that didn't even sell well. What you writing about? I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then I got to head out because I'm already a little bit late. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. 2019, New York State passed a law that auto opts in never registered voters to register for them under no party, aka independent, the moment they interact with the state agency like the DMV. Imagine how many high schoolers by decade end New York State will have. I suggest other states run this as a CBI. This will increase the number of indies in districts like AOC's. Don't be surprised. We could become a swing state and districts. And that is my plea to those of you tonight. And I'm going to end with this. Thank you, Snork. Someone other than Chelsea Clinton needs to primary. And thank you for this. Don't forget the entire squad voted for Hakeem. Bingo. My closing message tonight to you is this. If you are still registered as a Democrat, my plea to you is that you change your voter registration to independent. Doesn't cost you anything. Go online to your DMV or your RMV or whatever it's called in your state and change your registration to independent and leave this pathetic party. That is all, guys. Off tomorrow. I'll be back on Tuesday. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.